In the old myths, it was said that Atlas held up the earth, the heavens, and the sky. In the 21st century, the company that bore his name shared in that same burden, offering security, offering peace and order to an increasingly fractured world. But where the mythical Atlas was bound by divine decree, the Atlas Corporation was driven by far more human ambitions. Founded in 2035 by Jonathan Irons, a veteran who leveraged his experience and his connections to win contracts with the military. Atlas used these early funds to expand into various technical industries, most notably bioengineering firms, effectively becoming the single largest such firm in 2037. They used their technical knowledge and growing capital to pursue practical applications for their technological developments, a brief highlight of which includes the development of optical camouflage, capable of hiding individual soldiers and whole assault groups, the creation of exosuit platforms and heavier armored support transports, which transformed individual soldiers into heavy weapons platforms, the rapid growth of 3D printed weapons and munitions, hover technologies that greatly increased the mobility of tanks, recon forces, and drones, to say nothing of the increasingly networked drone forces and their combat faculties, nor the medical advances the company pioneered or refined. Over the course of decades, they were reshaping everything from logistics and transportation to the very way wars were to be fought. These innovations saw the company blossom into an international powerhouse, whose offices, labs, and training facilities spread across the Western world. The company was awarded the single largest ever arms contract with the United States military. This, combined with their successes in the field and their burgeoning industrial output, an output that had come to surpass several nations, led to the company's services being expanded. Initially, they were limited to property and personal security. It began to take on greater and greater responsibilities, taking over the rebuilding and reshaping of the battered, war-torn city of Baghdad, a city which time and time again had been destroyed in destructive conflicts. They transformed, not only restoring its battered buildings, but building a new culture, a new metropolis, a truly new Baghdad. At the same time, company analysts had been contracted by several nations to evaluate their security concerns and found them wanting. In particular, they provided a warning to the United States that their nuclear power facilities represented a tactical hazard. Rather than directly adopting the recommendations, the government handed Atlas a contract, effectively handing off their problem. And to those with deep enough pocketbooks, Atlas could provide a fully self-contained large-scale military force to engage in a long-term military campaign, beginning to live up to the idea of a superpower for hire. As conflict erupted on the Korean Peninsula and absorbed much of the global press, for Atlas it was but a sideshow. A handful of their forces worked with the Republic of Korea and the United States to resolve the hostilities there, but the bulk of Atlas was focused on a new problem, a new global threat, the KVA, a movement critical of the West and their liberal democracies, critical of the world's increasing reliance on technology, a movement who in the course of but a few years drew members from across every continent, and when they made themselves known, they struck out at governments, industries, and civilians alike. Atlas took up the defense of countless officials and secured critical installations the world over. And yet, the height of their campaign against the KVA, Atlas failed. Failed to protect their clients, failed to prevent the greatest terrorist attack committed in human history. On April 28th, 2055, KVA forces launched a concerted attack across multiple continents, targeting numerous nuclear power stations, pushing them into meltdown. In the aftermath, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, were left dead or dying. But in this failure, there lay opportunity. Atlas sprang into action, constructing vast refugee camps for those impacted by the disastrous attack. They produced and distributed much-needed medical supplies and food items to those who had been left in need. They restored a sense of stability and security to regions and nations dominated by chaos and uncertainty. Atlas forces, whether they be soldiers, doctors, engineers, soon overshadowed the work of any charity or any government. As the days turned to months and then years, Atlas was rewarded with more and more contracts. Nation after nation handing over the keys to their critical infrastructure to Jonathan Irons. All the while, Atlas was swaddled in praise for their decisive action. To many, Atlas had become the savior of mankind. Atlas was a chance for a future. New bases, labs, and manufacturing facilities were constructed throughout the world to support their growing mission, allowing Atlas to increasingly operate under its own volition. Acting unilaterally, Atlas forces attacked a KVA site in Greece, killing the organization's leader, a figure known to the world at large as Hades. In the weeks that followed, the KVA was ground into the earth, cell after cell exposed and destroyed with brutal efficiency. In light of the company's heroic achievements, Jonathan Irons and his Atlas were offered not only a seat in the United Nations, but a seat on the Security Council, a first for any company and an achievement beyond most nations. Yet, even as he and his company were praised, they came under fire from an elite force, a small group of individuals who had the audacity to strike at Irons' home, that assaulted Atlas facilities across the globe from Thailand to Bulgaria. At the same time, rumors began to circulate that Atlas was working on some sort of weapon of mass destruction, biological agent that rumors called Manticore. To Irons, it was clear who was attacking his firm. For those who have held power, few were willing to relinquish it. Knowing full well that his company had done more for the world in his lifetime than a century of America's wars, he believed that he and his company could finally bring about peace, that they were the only ones capable of bringing about peace, the only ones who would pursue such a goal no matter the cost. And so, there, standing before the assembled international community upon the floor of the United Nations, seeing the faces of political and world leaders, Irons felt nothing but contempt. This assemblage nothing more than the ceremonial trappings of a bygone institution, whose membership was nothing more than those who had failed to bring about lasting peace, whose ineptitude failed to solve any global issue. No, they had directly contributed to the world's many problems, imposing wars, and ineffectual wars at that, to impose their ideologies, each believing themselves wholly correct in their decisions. Before this audience, he admitted freely that the circling rumors were in fact true, that his company had developed biological weapons capable of targeting specific genomes, specific ethnic groups. As the leader of the largest military force on the planet, he considered it his moral responsibility to bring about global peace, to end the perpetual violence. His final words to the gathered assembly, that he intended to solve the world's problems, starting with those that sat before him. The first target of Irons' wrath was the so-called Superpower, the United States, a nation that symbolized everything he despised. Their power flaunted in near-endless, ineffectual war, a nation that had tried in secret to tie his hands, attacking his house and his company, trying in vain to exert a semblance of control over Atlas. His forces launched a large-scale attack on the city of San Francisco on June 15, 2060, destroying the Golden Gate Bridge, mobilizing the Third Fleet, and allowing Atlas naval assets to bombard the immobilized fleet with near immunity. The attack grounding to a halt in the face of determined resistance from surviving sailors and Special Forces units, who managed to bring the ailing carrier's railguns online and send the Atlas ships below the waves. Though this assault had ultimately ended in failure, it was but the first salvo in what would quickly become a global conflict. The boldness and destruction of the assault were a shock to the world at large. Thousands of innocent lives snuffed out in but a moment. The United States and the nations of the free world mobilized for war, many of them struggling with hostile Atlas enclaves within their own borders, dealing with these hostile forces, controlling their infrastructure, or engaging in protracted campaigns to secure what Atlas facilities remained. The bulk of this allied effort was aimed at hunting down and capturing Irons if possible, killing him if not, resulting in a massed campaign in 2061 against the city of New Baghdad. Their forces soon became bogged down in heavy fighting, caught in overlapping fields of fire from heavy weapon emplacements and well-armed Atlas ground forces, supported with tanks and ASTs, before outright being destroyed by swarms of drones, dousing the invaders in Manticore. Of those within the city, only a handful survived. The remaining Allied forces were forced into a hasty retreat. The capability of Manticore proven on the battlefield was an absolute game-changer. Irons prepared to launch long-range missiles laden with Manticore to target the remaining military facilities across the globe, knowing that through these targeted strikes, that all who remained capable of opposing Atlas would be wiped out without any bloodshed, without any risk, and victory became all too palpable. with victory in sight, as those missiles were fueled and ready to launch, those few survivors of the first invasion succeeded in infiltrating the Atlas command complex, succeeded in preventing the launch, and killing Jonathan Irons. In his last moments, he watched the city he had built burn around him. Even so, the war had only just begun. The future is anyone's guess. Perhaps nations would reclaim their mantle as the protector and provider for their citizenry, or, like many empires before it, the surviving leaders would fight amongst themselves for the now vacant throne. Or maybe this war is but an interlude, a darkness before the coming dawn of a new world as seen through Iron's eyes. A world free from tyranny and inefficacies of government, free from the artificial differences and dogmas. A world where all necessities would be provided, united under a single flag. Whatever the case may be, what can be said with absolute certainty is that the world shook and nations collapsed when Atlas shrugged. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, had perished, and the genie of genetic weapons has been loosed upon the world. A new, mutually assured destruction.